Well, the early morning light streaming in, hopefully it doesn't wash everything out. I just wanted to show you the progress on the bodice. We're really just putting our finishing touches on it, but we have sewn the, actually went back and tried to make that a little better. I think it's a little better, still not as nice as the sample, but we've applied the ruching to the sleeves, making sure we're using the contrasting ruching on each sleeve. And we've, again, we've mitered this, we've sewn it down, we've turned over the raw ends, and I actually turned over, I pulled out a little bit of the gathering just to make it a little less bulky, and then turned it over, and then started creating these wonderful rosettes. And just want to show you, it's not too difficult. Basically, what you're going to do is you're just going to basically create a rosette, and I believe these rosettes are about, let's measure them just so I can get it right, 2.5, I think, about 2.5 inches wide. So we're going to make one of these pink rosettes, and I'm just going to put that aside for a second, and then we're going to start to make a cream silk rosette, and they're going to be the exact same number of loops, but we're going to have, this one's going to be a little bit smaller because it's going to sit inside that pink, and we want to see that pink come through. So I think, and let me measure it, I think this one was probably going to be 1.5 inches. That's probably a little bit more than that. I want to make it a little bit smaller. Let's see here. Yeah. Let's see. You know, there's no pattern for this. It's just something that you have to sort of look at and figure out. You know what? I think I'm going to keep it at this 2 inches. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, so we're just going to basically start to create these loops. And with the satin ribbon, it's a little bit more tricky because you've got two sides to the satin ribbon and you want the shiny side to show if possible. With this, the cream silk ribbon is the same on both ends, so, or both sides, so you don't really need to worry too much about that. Now, if you want, you could always take, instead of pinning it, if you feel the pinning is a little bit too fussy for you, you can always just take your threaded needle and just sort of like you sew these down as you're doing this. I mean, I like to sometimes just like see what it's going to look like before it's finished. Now, one thing you're going to need to do, let's see, we just want to make sure this doesn't pull out. One thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to make, let me see, you're going to need to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of these. 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them are actually going to be layered onto the pink. And the other 2 are just going to be used on either side of the hat. And, you know, you can make them now or make them later, but they should all be the same size if possible. Let's see how that's looking. Yeah, it's a little finicky, but, you know, once you've done one, you'll sort of find your own way of doing it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that's the number of loops that we want. And then where's my needle? Hopefully I've already knotted it. Yay! Okay, I'm gonna, whoops, I think this one pulled out. Okay, so I'm going to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think that's actually right. So the only difference is with this particular rosette is that I'm just going to sew this quickly and show you. You know, and I think if you were to do this by sort of sewing them down one at a time as you loop them over, it probably would be slightly easier because you can still do some adjustments and things like that. But I'm just trying to make sure I catch everything. Okay, so the difference with this one is that we're going to clip this off the back. You might also need to iron this because it sort of retains the memory of the card it was on. So we're going to take about, let's say, 6 inches. And we're just going to, it doesn't have to be exact because you're going to trim it again. And we're just going to tie a little knot here. It doesn't have to be super tight. There we go. And then what we're doing with that is we're going to create this little effect as if it was actually tied together in sort of with a knot. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So we're just going to basically take our knot. We're going to, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly centered, but we're going to try to center it as much as possible. And we're going to sew it to the center of that cream silk rosette. So basically, once this is all done, oops, just want to make sure you don't pull your silk. Yeah. Once this is all done, I want to make sure I capture everything here. You ever feel sometimes that your fingers just get in the way? Well, at least mine always do. Okay. We're going to go through this again. Oop. Okay. Then we're going to take our pink rosette, which actually hasn't been sewn together yet. Probably would be a good idea to sew it together. And we're going to put it in the center. Now, the reason why these two are longer is that we want them to sort of appear as if it was tied off. So once it's all sewn together, I'm going to compare it with the other one I've done, and I'm going to cut these streamers to about the same size. And then I'm probably going to finish the bodice and sew the last rosette on the bodice because I've already sewn it on the back, and I've sewn one on the right shoulder or the right front of the bodice. We're going to apply, there's a piece of the, I don't know if this is I think it's 1/4 inch pink satin ribbon in your kit, and you're going to just very carefully just ruffle that by doing a gathering stitch along one of the edges, and you want to sort of make it as close as possible to the edge. And as you're doing it, you're just sort of pulling it up. If you really want to make your life a little easier, you might sew it, you might pin it down so it doesn't twist as you're doing it. And then what I like to do, I like to basically gather it, then I like to pin it down just in a few places just to keep it sort of stable, and then I spray it. You could also just mist it, let it sit and dry, because then it helps really the gathers to sort of stay, or the folds to stay. You could also steam it. It's really your decision. So since I've already done this, what we're going to do is we've turned over one edge of this, one raw edge, and that raw edge is going to face the inside of the bodice. So, you probably could just do this without pinning it because it's just so delicate and fine. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to sew that almost, like a 1/16 below the edge of your bodice, or the neckline of your bodice, because you just want sort of this little ruffle peeping out over there. You don't want to see your gathering stitches, so you're sewing just to cover those gathering stitches. And I'll probably just do this by hand rather than using pins. I just think they get in the way, and not particularly happy with those. So I'm just going to turn a side back. I'm going to start it. Actually, you could knot this off. I just didn't know how much I really needed, so I wanted to make sure I had enough. You will have plenty. It's not that you're going to run out of anything. There's more than enough in the kit. Okay, so I'm probably just going to take, and I don't know if I have another threaded needle here. That would be smart, wouldn't it? I do. I don't think it's the right color. Oop, and I think it pulled out. No. Okay. And you're just going to basically take just the edge of that. I might need my thimble because these layers just make it a little bit tricky to pull things through. So I'm going to make sure that you are not going through the other side, and you shouldn't be because there are quite a few layers at the back here. And I'm just going to pull this up a little bit. And you're going to sew it in place along the edge. If you really want to be particular, you can turn that raw edge under and sort of hem it. But there are some raw edges in this costume, and it's perfectly fine. As I pricked myself again, I can't tell you how many times I have pricked myself lately. Okay, so you're just really going to keep sort of working this, making sure that you're just below the edge of the neckline. And you're going to work that all the way across. And I think if you have too much when you get to the other side, what you can also do is just make sure that's covered. You can also just sew it down, make sure all the gathers are nicely sewn down, and just clip it. It's not going to, the gathers will be sewn in place. It's not going to go anywhere. And then you can turn that side under. So you see, like when you're gathering this, it has a mind of its own. It wants to twist and turn, and you just have to make sure that you're wrestling with it, making sure that it's not doing what you don't want it to. There we go. So you're going to have this, like, I'll have to go back and redo that, but you're going to have this little frill that's going to go above your neckline. And here, I'll show it to you in the sample. So it's really right, well, it's probably about a 1/16 away from the bottom, or from the edge of the bodice. So I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to finish my the rosette, get that sewn in place. One thing I don't think I showed you is that we also applied the ruching just between these points here of the bodice. Now, it's going to be, the end's going to be covered with this big rosette, so you want it to be neat, but there's going to be a little bit of covering that you can do. So you just basically will size that, turn under the raw ends, and stitch it in place exactly as you did this piece at the bottom and your cuffs. So I'm going to continue doing this, and then we'll probably move on to the hat. And the hat is a lot of fun. There's really not a lot of sewing in the hat. There's some whipping, but there's not a lot of like heavy duty sewing. So I think that one they'll be gluing though, which I think is always kind of fun to do because it's totally a different technique. And I like gluing. I think that it gives you a really beautiful effect, and they would have used glue in the 1880s for quite a few things. So it's not like it's not historically accurate. So I'm going to continue doing this, come back, and then we will start working on the hat together. Just turn it over and make sure that you're catching everything that you want to catch and you're not showing any of your stitches. I'm going to take my time with this and not bore you with it, but I'm just going to maybe finish it up to the rosette, and then I will be back. So here's the bodice. The only finishing touch really needs to be the hooks and the metal eyes that I'm going to be putting on the back. And again, we're going to be doing that like this. So this is a little bit set away from the edge. The hook is a little bit set away from the edge. And then the eye is going to be anchored down at this spot. So it just keeps this from flipping up. And then it's really a nice closure. They sort of just meet at the center, and there's no gapping or anything. So to show you, I think the last step was we were doing the bows, or rather the rosettes, and we were doing the gathering. So this is what the gathering looks like. And one thing I didn't tell you is that when you get to the center, you're going to have to run the gathering or stitch the gathering to just below your ruching, because if you do it below the neckline, you won't see it. And then we've finished our rosettes. I actually think it might be kind of cute. It's not in the directions, but I'm thinking maybe a tiny little rosette in the center of each one of those, like a little, I don't know, like a little gathered rose. I don't know. This is for me, so I'm going to try. And, this is another thing. Just, these instructions are for this exact design. But if you want to make some, like, little embellishments or some changes, please feel free. I think this would be really fun. Maybe some little bells or something attached to it. So we're moving on to the bonnet, or the hat. Bonnet is this is more of a hat. And we're going to be making 2 sets of brims in this configuration and 2 sets of brim in this configuration, meaning you're going to have 2 sets that are going to have the pistachio on the right, 2 sets that are going to have pistachio on the left. And then what we're going to do is we have 2 pieces of, actually 4 pieces of buckram that you're going to have cut out, and it's slightly smaller than the shape of this. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually be gluing this onto. We're not sewing, we're just gluing it. And where we're gluing it is just on the very, very edge. So one thing about this is that it might need some clamping while it's gluing. I'm going to do these points first. Turn this under. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press down or press over the seam allowance on all sides of this. And we're going to do the top curve first. Okay. You can see a little bit of that tarlatan, but you can spray that and it will come right out. So now what we're going to be doing, and this is something that is a suggestion for you, is that we're going to be applying some glue. And the glue could probably just be applied to the satin side. But in order to make it sort of like an even distribution, we're just going to brush it on. And by brushing it on, and I'll have to take this pin out, by brushing it on, it's just going to really ensure good coverage and that it's going to be down there. Now, the trick is, it doesn't seem to be that difficult from a sort of a way of doing this, is that you don't want to have so much glue that it's going to show on the other side. So that's why we're sort of spreading it out, trying to make it as even as possible. You know, you're going to have a few little like not tucks, but little pleats that you're going to have to do so you can get a nice smooth edge on this side. And also, just so you know, if you do have it like a tiny little bit of, you know, glue coming through, we're going to be trimming this with very similar to the top of the bodice. We're going to be gathering a larger piece of the satin ribbon, and we're going to be applying that on top of this edge. So it's like, it's a decorative thing, but it also is going to help to hide anything that we don't quite like. Okay, let me get rid of this. Okay, so when we get to and I'm doing this as always rather quickly, but I think that please do take your time. I'm going to be, I see it dries really quickly. I'm going to be clipping into this lower side of the brim. And the reason why I'm doing that is that it's difficult to turn something. See how there's a little bit of extra that's being caught up here? Well, it's sort of the reverse when you're doing an inside curve. It's going to bunch up. So we're just going to clip this. And we're going to do the same thing that we did above. And maybe I'll start at the center and work my way out. It goes down beautifully. And this Weehaw is really just the best glue for these sort of types of fabric projects, I think. I think it was Cheryl who introduced it the first time, but it's great. It's great product. Okay, so we're just going to continue working around. And then, let me just see here for 1 second. Where we get to the point, we're going to really want to miter that a little bit and sort of fold it in on itself. So just bear with me for 1 minute, and we'll do one of the points, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So basically the idea here is that we're doing this, each side of the brim is going to be made up of 2 pieces, and they're going to be contrasting pieces. So in other words, if you have, well, this is the wrong thing. If you've got a pink side on the front or on the inside, you're going to want to have a green side facing the pink. So, you know, it just goes back to the idea of the skirt and to the bodice. It's just sort of this wonderful sort of harlequin-like arrangement. Okay. When we get down to this point is also going to be covered, just so you know. There's the point. We're going to just make this, you might have to trim into it a little bit. And then we're going to give this a good press just to make it flat. You see? Then you've got a point there. You know, and I don't even think I need to put any glue there at this point. I think it's probably okay. So I'm just going to do this one. And then what you really should be doing is, you know, preparing these and then putting them aside and work on something else while it dries. So, you know, you have quite a few pieces of this you have to make. And I would say, let me just make sure I got this nice and pointy. The great thing about Weehaw is that you can sort of work with it. It's not like it dries immediately and then you can never touch it again. Just see this point. Here we go. I'm going to jerry-rig it a little bit. It's going to, again, this is going to be covered by your trim. It's a little bit wonky here. It's for me. I'm going fast. But you're going to have this sort of this ruched ribbon that's going to go all the way around here, and it's going to cover these points. And you're going to have 2 of the cream rosettes here and here. So the thing to learn from this is take your time. Don't rush. Don't look at me while I'm doing this because I'm rushing, which is not a good thing. But I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. Once you have all brims done, again, you should have 2 pairs of each. We're going to be doing the hat base. Now, in your pattern, you're going to see that you're going to be doing a cream hat base and a pistachio hat base. I'm going to do this in the middle. It's exactly the same method as covering the brim. You're going to be ironing over the seam allowance, carefully folding it in where you need to. And we're going to do a better job than we did on the others. On this side, we're going to really get a nice point there. Now we got to that end. That's interesting. I didn't have buckram. You'll have buckram in your kit. So I had to use a little bit of iron-on interfacing to create sort of a stronger, using tarlatan to create a stronger tarlatan. It's 2 layers of tarlatan that have been fused together. You know, tarlatan really isn't great when you try to glue it together, per se. And it's actually the interfacing, or the fusible interfacing, is actually sticking the turnover in place, which is interesting. That's not what you're going to be doing. You're going to be gluing it. It just happens to be a happy accident for me. Okay, just see, it didn't glue it on all. It didn't adhere it on all sides. So I'm just going to go through again. You're going to be doing all of the gluing. All these edges are going to be glued down. Okay. So with the green side, which is going to be the side that you actually see, this is going to be the side that's facing the hat. You're going to, let me get my pattern. You're going to be, yep, that's right. Let's see here. I'm trying to make sure this is centered. You're going to be putting in a length of cream silk. Now, I think you could probably use cream silk if you want. I think you probably could use, I'll get the hat sample. Here's the hat. What you're basically doing is you're going to be creating 2 little holes, or actually threading a length, probably about 20 inches should do it, of the cream silk ribbon. You're going to be threading that through this after you put your green on. So that's, you could transfer these things again. I think it'll probably disappear once I start ironing. But the idea is that you're creating like the ties for the hat. And it's just really smart to do that before you actually put it together, because it would be a pain to actually try to maneuver it. Yeah, so let's imagine that this is all done. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be, again, taking our, you might want to iron this out again because it gets to be wrinkled. We're going to be taking about a 20-inch long, and you can always make it a little longer and trim it once you thread it through. Imagine this is all glued on the edges. We're just going to be running it through this point and this point. And then once we've done that, we know it's even. We're just going to be putting a little dot of glue there just to keep it from sort of sliding back and forth. So I'm going to finish the rest of the brims. And I'm going to slow down a little bit so I don't make any more mistakes. I'm a little ashamed at how many little flubs I'm making. And sort of you might have a little bit of like puckering. You can always wet that a little bit and get those wrinkles out. Satin's really forgiving. Well, any of these natural fibers seem to be forgiving, I think. There we go. Yeah, that was good. So I'm going to finish. I'm going to finish with the other brims and with this base, and then I'm going to come back and show you how we assemble these components. And again, it's not going to be by sewing them together. It's going to be by gluing them together, which I think is really very interesting. Go. Okay, so I will be back when we have all of our brims and our bases done, and I'll show you the next step. So once you have your bases assembled, you're going to glue them together. You're going to glue them in the center, and you're going to glue them on the points, and you're going to do the same with the brim, and use clamps while it's basically drying just to keep it in place. And then our next step is to determine what's your front side and what's your back side. So I don't really, I wasn't very happy with this side. So I'm actually going to, use this side as my inside. Is that right? Yeah. Yep. That'll be my inside. So we're going to start to put this together. Now, I think if you're sort of thinking about this, yeah, that'll be the back. You're going to have to whip these edges together. So I would use either your pink or your green thread. And I would just like make sure that you've got a good solid tie off here. And then we're going to whip together the edges. It doesn't have to be a tight whip. You're just trying to make sure that you're attaching it. So basically you're going to be going around the shape of the brim. At some points you're probably going to have to fold it a little bit to just get it to cooperate. And remember, all of these edges, including the inside of the hat base, are going to be trimmed with the gathered satin ribbon. So there are opportunities, as I said, for you to, tighten things up, make sure that you have things that this whole seam is going to be covered with ribbon. So I guess what I'm saying is it's okay if something is not like 100% perfect. Of course, I'm going fast as I always do when I'm making these videos. I really need to slow down. And this, actually, I should be using a thimble for this because it's actually quite tough to, where's my thimble? It's actually quite hard to move these, to push this through this layer of, I mean, it's not hard. It's just, you know, you need to give it a little bit of a helping hand here because you've got a couple of layers that you're going through, and satin is pretty dense. So I think that sort of shows you what the intention is. We're going to keep going around until we reach the other end. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other side. And so I've decided that this will be my front side. And let's make sure. Oh, you know what? I'm not doing it according to pattern because this should be the front side. Because really we want to have a color blocking here. I'll do that. Yeah, I will do that. Also, you'll notice that in the pattern, it shows that the front and the back are going to be contrasting. I kind of like it. I think you should follow the pattern, but I kind of like how it has that little bit of like consistency from the front to the back. Feels like it's like one solid brim. So I'm just going to keep doing this. You're going to want to try to catch a little bit of all of the layers when you do this. So from the back layer all the way to the front, you've already glued them together. It's not going to go anywhere. Ah, there's my thimble, that little rascal. Just make sure your stitches are fairly tight and even though they're going to be covered with the ribbon in one of the later steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep working on this. I'm going to put my other brim on, and oh, and here's the ribbon, the necktie. It was just put in and evened out, and I put a little dot of glue on the back of it before these have been glued together, so you're not going to see it from the inside. That's why I think their design, Michael's design, is just so pretty because it's finished inside and out, and it's just very nice. It's very sort of it's very luxe. So I'll keep doing this, and you can sort of see how it's turning out. And I will come back and we will talk about this gorgeous trim that's going to be going around this. So we have whipped the brims onto the edge of the hat base. And then we took the wider ribbon, which is in your kit, and we ran a gathering stitch down the center of it. Now, there's some left over here. I was just basically gathering it, measuring against, gathering it, measuring against, just to see how much I was going to have, or if anything, have left. And there is some left. So you might not have any left, or you might have a lot left. You know, this is up to you how tight you want those gathers to be. But I'm going to show you, if I can just unravel this thread, how we're also going to decorate the bottom of this. So this is going to go right, the thinner satin ribbon is going to go right on the edge, all the way around the bottom. And sometimes I like to, pin the edge or the end of this because it does just sort of go all over the place. I'm probably going to go back after it's been pinned. I did this with a wider ribbon. I'm going to go back and I'm sort of going to steam some of those, steam it in place because it sort of wants to curl up on itself and turn over on itself, and we just want it to be, as even as possible. So it's going to take, just, I think if you really want to be, careful about it, you could always take a measuring tape and you could measure each one of the sides here. it's a rough measurement. Let's say it's like 7 inches. And then just keep measuring it against what you've got gathered. Again, these can be tighter. But the one thing I will say is that when you're gathering up like this, sometimes it's good to gather up a couple of inches and then to sort of like take a little like anchoring stitch so they don't unravel. And then you have these sort of like areas of gathering that you can work within. Because gathering this long a piece, you're not going to probably have the same thread throughout the entire thing. You're going to have to knot it off anyway. But it just makes it a little bit easier to manage these really long pieces. So I'm going to probably just go in here and just like pin the gathers down, pin the ribbon down where I want it to be. I can't tell if that's actually yeah. So it sort of it gets folded on itself, and you want it to be as smooth as possible because this is also going to get glued on. Oh, that's the one thing I didn't say. I started at one end and then I glued, put a few drops of glue, and then I would just basically tamp it down. In the instructions, they're using clips, or we're using clips. You can use clips if you want, but the Weehaw is extremely fast drying, and you really shouldn't have any problem getting it to set properly. So I'm going to, and basically we did all in one go. So we started here, went up and around, went around the curve, up and around, and then just folded it back on itself. There's going to be a rosette here, so it's going to, that little join will be hidden. So I'm going to continue to do this. Then I'm going to make the rosette, which is going to be the pink and cream ribbon rosette for the top of the bonnet. There's going to be one that goes at the top. These really charming long streamers. And then we're going to do two smaller ones. So you basically have to make 3 of these center. You have to make 2, and then you have to make another one for the center of this, the pink ribbon. So I'm going to just keep plodding along here and get this into a good place. And then I'll come back and I'll show you perhaps how it's sort of being... how to glue this onto the edge. So I want to show you a little bit of the gluing. It's really pretty simple. You're just going to take a small dot of glue, maybe just want to do like 3, just to be careful, and you're going to just align and press the ribbon trim onto that spot. And it sets pretty quickly. But if you want to use, if you want to hold it for a while, that's fine too, but it will set fairly quickly. And then we're just going to keep going down. When we meet the base, we're just going to glue it, then we're going to clip it. And this is where our rosettes will be. So I am going to just keep doing this. Yeah. And if you see like a little space that you feel like you need to fill in, you can just put a little squirt of your Weehaw in there. There we go. So, probably gonna cut it like here. So you've got a nice bit of ribbon left over to do something else with. And I'm going to glue in there. And then a little bit of glue there. There we go. Okay. And just a couple more dots. Yeah, it's really pretty, except for some of the glue I got on my own piece. So I'm going to finish I started a rosette. If I could just find it. Where are you, rosette? Well, I started a rosette. I'm going to keep working on that rosette. Then I'll work on the 2 rosettes on the side. Here we go. There's the rosette. So this will go in the center. It will have a cream rosette in the center, and then we'll do 2 cream rosettes here, and then we're done. I hope that you have enjoyed this project. It really is fun, and I'm sure you're going to have a much easier time if you're using your sewing machines and your sewing machine aficionados, unlike myself, who am not. But enjoy, and look forward to working on some other kits for Angélique. She's really wonderful to sew for, and I hope that you can purchase her. Thank you.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button.